Hey there everybody, it's Alex here from VG247.com, and I'm here with a little bit of footage of the much anticipated remake of the third Resident Evil game. This is obviously from a preview build, a work in progress build. And obviously we had Resident Evil 2 remake a little while ago, and this is very, very similar to that. But that, of course, I think is pretty appropriate. The original Resident Evil 2 and 3 were quite closely linked as well. They were very similar games, taking place in some similar settings with some overlap and all that sort of stuff. And this is much the same. So I got to play several hours of it, and it totally is what you would expect. It's the same engine, sort of the same visual quality, the same style. But the difference between Resi 2 and Resi 3 has always been that the third game sort of turned stuff up to 11. The third game is definitely actually that bridge between the real horror-focused Resident Evil that the series started with earlier and indeed returned to with 7, and the action-packed superhero sort of stuff that we got in 4, 5, and 6. The third game is definitely the bridge between the two. And the remake is definitely... It's faithful. It's faithful to that concept. So when I was playing this demo, and obviously you can never quite say with difficulty on these things, because sometimes for press demos, they sort of, and public demos at trade shows and stuff, they sort of make stuff easier or give you a lot of resources so people don't find themselves running out of ammo. But I think it's probably part of the design where I definitely found that I had a lot of ammo quite early on, because it's encouraging you to really take on everything that's around you, because there's zombies everywhere, and of course there is the unique thing about the third game, which is Nemesis. Now the interesting thing about Nemesis here is, when they brought out Resident Evil 2 Remake, I was slightly concerned that they'd sort of played their hand for Resident Evil 3 Remake, in the respect that in Resident Evil 2 you have the Tyrant, you have Mr. X, and the Tyrant in Resi 2 on the PlayStation has a limited capability. And he's really expanded in the remake, and in the remake he resembles Nemesis from this game quite a lot more. Now the interesting thing is they've sort of managed to take care of that, so Nemesis does not just feel like Mr. X, like the Tyrant from Resident Evil 2, and in fact it makes a lot of sense the way they've sort of built him, in that he's definitely got a lot in common with the Tyrant, but in order to become a Nemesis, you have to first be a Tyrant. Sort of the Nemesis is an even more corrupted, even more mutated version of what Mr. X was. So it sort of makes sense that at a base level, he's the same, but then scratch beneath the surface and he's a far more effective stalker to chase you. And he sort of has... Obviously, you can use weapons, so there are sections of the demo I play where you're being chased with a flamethrower. There are sections of the demo where you're running from him out in open city streets sort of thing, or as open as they can get during a zombie apocalypse. Of course, there's abandoned cars and fire and stuff like that in the way. And he can do stuff like, if you run past him and just try to run away from him, he can do stuff like grab you with his tentacles. They'll extend out and grab you and make you trip up and fall over so he can catch up with you. I'm pretty sure he can also use his tentacles to sort of pull himself to the other side of you like a grappling hook, so if he's running behind you he can sort of pull himself and catch up with you that way. So you see what I mean? There's all these sorts of ways where he's a far more effective and far more deadly character to chase you than the Tyrant was. And to be honest with you, I don't cope well with stuff like this, and the zombie stuff, it didn't bother me at all. It never does. There was one jump scare in particular that got me, that was a very cleverly hidden, they put an item crate in a specific place, and when you run towards that item crate to get a green herb or some ammo or whatever's in there, there's a zombie encounter, sort of on the way, which grabs you by surprise. That did make me jump, but the zombie stuff doesn't really bother me. But when I was being chased by Nemesis, it's like you get the proper stress. you really feel it in your gut, you know what I mean? And I think that is the thing you can say about this game, where like you just say that and you know that it's sort of mission accomplished. But like I said, there's some other stuff about this remake. So it's sort of got, like I said, it's more actiony, so you've got more ammunition and stuff like that. This is quite early on in the game, and yeah, I was able to sort of get an upgrade from my gun, a red dot sight. You've got things in the environment, so there's like electrical things, I don't know what they are, substations, whatever, that are around the city. And if you shoot those, they will electrocute anything in a radius. So you can use that to stun Nemesis, but also you can use that to take out like 5 zombies at once. I was given a lot of grenades. But the big change, actually, is the new combat dodge. So for that, you have to be aiming down the sights, and then you press a button. I think it's right bumper R1, but it's always hard to remember when you come away from these things. But you press a button, and basically you do a sort of a little quick dodge forwards. Now, if you get the timing right, then obviously you can just dodge forwards and get past the zombie. If you do it perfectly, instead of just a dodge forwards, it becomes a sort of combat roll, and the screen sort of flashes to show that you've done a perfect dodge. It almost feels like something out of a character action game, like the way you would do dodges in something like a Nier Automata or Bayonetta or whatever. Obviously, it's not quite like that, but definitely the way the screen flashes for you to tell you that you've done a perfect dodge, it's really, really cool. And you can use that against Nemesis as well, so you can sort of almost dodge between his legs, which is great, to sort of get away from him. And it just, all these things sort of add up to just make this feel like a more action-packed game than Resident Evil 2. But that, I don't think that dents the horror, so to speak. Like I said, when Nemesis is on your tail and you've got a very specific sort of goal that you've got to get to on the map, that's not a good feeling. You know, you really feel the dread in the pit of your stomach from being chased, and so that's really, really good. The footage you've got here, you know, as you're probably able to tell, this isn't the footage that I captured. It's, you know, the UI has been removed and all that sort of stuff, so you can't see the aiming cursor or the ammo counters or anything like that. So this is footage that Capcom has provided, but this is the section of the game that I played. And it very much looks like the game that I played as well. I was playing on a PlayStation controller. I wasn't clear if it was a console or a dev kit or a PC plugged into a console, but I'm pretty sure if I had to guess that I played the PS4 Pro. But to be honest, performance and stuff isn't really a concern, because this is the same engine as Resi 2 Remake. It's the same sort of visual fidelity. There's a bit more openness to this game, so I'm sure there were some performance concerns in terms of when you're out in the wide open city streets and stuff. But it ran great, it looks great, and it feels like a really smart take still on the formula that was sort of established in the second game, and even in the original was grown and changed in the third. And that's really, really cool, I think. I think these two games sort of, they form a little duology where they do different things extraordinarily well, but they have enough similarity and connective tissue that if you liked one, you're more or less guaranteed to like the other. And the actual question will probably be, which one is your favorite? Do you prefer the more action-packed game of Resi 3, or do you prefer the sort of more contemplative, slower stuff of the second game? Obviously, there's still lots of the second game sort of stuff in there. There's still lots of puzzles, and your you know, the one main puzzle in the section I played is there's a fire in the way, and you need to sort of there's a fire on a street, and you need to get down that street, and there's a fire hydrant at the top of the street, but you don't have a fire hose. So in classic Resident Evil fashion, you've got to trek across the map, go to some different places in order to find a fire hose, put out that fire, and then go to the next area. And there's lots of that, and then obviously once you've obtained what you need from that area, you're then backtracking, this time with Nemesis chasing you. And so all that stuff sort of adds up in a big and satisfying way. Some questions that I know will be asked in the comments. I don't know if you're able to down Nemesis temporarily in this version. It was not something that I was able to accomplish in my limited time with the game. He is a hardy fella. But if I had to guess, I would assume that you probably can down him, because you could down Jack in 7 and you could down the Tyrant in 2. But yeah, if you can't tell, I really enjoyed Resident Evil Remake, both 2 and 3. They're both really, really, well, the second one I could say with absolute certainty is really, really good. And, you know, it's very rare you go for a hands-on with a game and you come away and go, yep, they've nailed it, not a problem. I look forward to playing the final version. I'm sure it's going to be good. But because this is such a known quantity, because it's continuing down the path that the Resi 2 Remake set, it's it's a no-brainer. I wasn't shocked at all that it was going to be good. It was pretty much a foregone conclusion, I think. But I am surprised, as I said, by how different they've made Nemesis feel and how effective they've made him feel and how different to the Tyrant they've made him feel, because I don't think that was particularly easy, because I thought honestly that they'd given up their secrets almost. They'd given up their X factor by doing the Tyrant as they had in Resi 2. So to see Nemesis standing out so much is great. And I will say I really like the characterization of Jill as well. I think she's badass in this game, and I love the sort of a section where Nemesis is chasing you through narrow corridors. Very similar, actually, to the section of Resident Evil 2 Remake where you play as Ada and you're in the sort of sewer sort of area, and it's quite an enclosed space, and you've got it's sort of like a mini boss encounter with Nemesis. There's a section here where you're running away with Nemesis, with the Tyrant, and there's a section here where you're running away from Nemesis that's very similar to that. What I love is Jill is goading Nemesis. Jill is insulting Nemesis. She's got some fight in her in this characterization. I mean, she always did, but I really, really like this new characterization. I think they continue to nail these reimaginings of these classic characters and the way they're casting them and finding the right looking people to scan the faces in and stuff. It's good stuff. And yeah, that pretty much sums it up. It's good stuff. I really enjoyed my limited time with Resident Evil 3 Remake, and I'm running out of footage to show you now. One thing I will say is I did also get to play some more Resident Evil Resistance, which of course is the multiplayer mode that ships with this game, that is part of this game because it comes with this game, but it's also definitely sort of a separate project development-wise. It's very different. It is running on the same engine though and stuff, but it is a very different game. But if you want to know more about that, we've got some video of that too for you to check out. But yeah, that is Resident Evil, yet another Resident Evil remake. The question is, will they do 4? Or will they do 8 next? Or will they do 8 and then 4? Or will they do 4 and then 8? It's quite exciting, but I hope they do something new next. I would like to see a new game first before they move on to another remake. But I think everybody sort of wants to see them do 4 now, because that is such a beloved game. Anyway, if you want to read a bit more of my impressions on this game, do hit up VG247.com, because there's a written preview which is much more structured than my random ramblings here. But the point is, if you were sort of sitting on the fence and waiting to hear, you know, hands-on impressions, if this game was going to be good, if the third remake was going to be as good as the second, here's the good news. It's good. It seems to be really, really good, and I cannot wait for it to come out, which isn't long now, thankfully. So that's it from me. Don't forget to give us a like, give us a subscribe, hit all those positive buttons. It apparently helps us out, so I'm told by the Google and YouTube gods. And yeah, until next time, everyone. See ya.